So, hi everybody, welcome back. When last we met, we were talking about imperialism, and we got ourselves into Africa and into India, and then we left
Yeah,
abruptly.
yeah. Time to
Very
go.
abruptly, it was time to go. India, we packed up and we put stuff back in there, but in Africa, we sort of just like left everything and stole the shampoo and took one of the robes and
That's
like bolted.
that's exactly what the Europeans did. So it's almost
Yeah.
it leads to decades and decades of political strife and civil wars in former, especially former French African colonies.
Oh
So
gosh, especially in that we talked about that. The way the French handled it was a very, very tyrannical system.
yes,
So if you're looking, what I want you to notice more than anything is that you've got this is Asia.
yeah, we changed maps.
We changed map. This is Asia. I don't know if you guys noticed this. We've had trouble before. This is Asia.
Yeah.
So tell
So
them where
so
we're at.
when we talk about Asia, we're talking about now we're going to get the Americans involved as well as in there as well. So you guys that study U.S. history right now, you're gonna have to actually start paying attention because we have now this map. I know it's a map from World War II, but as we know, the imperialism movement sets up World War One, which then leads to World War II. So when we talk about getting into Asia, we really want to talk about why are we there, who are we there, and then kind of again the legacy that's left behind. So you can go all the way back to the late 1700s, but we're going to kind of skip forward, make sure we're in the 1800s, kind of in the proper time period. And it's really the British, and it seems to always be the British that's starting this stuff, right? That they love their big empire, right?
Who
They love.
doesn't?
Well, yeah. Hey, when you got a saying, "Like the sun never sets on the British Empire,"
You got to man that.
you
up.
got to
You got to
make it
try
happen.
that out. It's like it's not that's on a small boast. That's a pretty big flex.
Yeah.
Sitting there and saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire means that we control every part of this world from all the way around it, and we can hold it. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing that they proved in Africa. That's the thing they tried to prove in India. We can hold it until they couldn't.
Yes,
But
until they needed a little help from their friends.
so we want to talk about Hong Kong first.
Hong Kong and touch of the Opium War a little bit.
Let's get some opium. Let's do some opium.
All right, let's go.
So the Opium Wars are not the first Opium Wars. These are the second Opium Wars. The Opium Wars are a series of conflicts with the Chinese government trying to stop the importation of the drug opium. Opium is a terrifying drug because it's extraordinarily insidious. Also, it's a terrible drug because it's so useful. It's an opiate, it's a narcotic, and it dulls the senses and it causes you to not feel much pain. And for a time before anesthetics are a procedure that we can, that are much safer now and are much more varied, opium's your one-stop shop.
And remember, in the West, it was legal. You had
Mhm.
opium dens. If you went to western towns in the western part of the United States, you would have an opium den that was there. It's
a
almost
bunch
almost like a modern day THC dispensary.
It is, only it has way better furniture.
Yes, way more
Also,
comfortable.
if you remember the movie Tombstone, I'm going to quote Tombstone, which every human being should and every human being does. If you haven't watched the movie Tombstone, I don't know. We can't fix you. We
No,
can't
we
help
can't.
you. But if you look, laudanum is the term for it. Laudanum is they give it to you for migraines and headaches and aches and body pains
And to
stuff
get off
like that.
cocaine addiction,
And to get off cocaine addiction. Gosh, cocaine was terrible. So we should give
which
you
also was
laudanum.
legal.
Well, to show you how powerful opium is, a German inventor created heroin to get you off of opium.
Yeah, which got you off of cocaine.
Which got you off cocaine. So you just step down slowly.
Ugh.
So opium is extraordinarily prevalent. I believe some historians, the ranges of addiction rates go from about like 50% on the low end to 70% on the high end, that the Chinese population, and this is men, women, children, elderly, this is everybody, is addicted to opium. It is bad. And they want to stop the import of it. But the problem is they can't stop the British bringing it in. But they try.
Try.
And so,
Well, when they try, then they start losing. And in this case, losing lands, losing ground. The British in Hong Kong everybody should be familiar with the spheres of influence
Oh
that happen
yes.
there, right? Everybody wants a piece of China, whether it's to sell their opium, or whether to go in and get the silk, or whether it's to go in and get the spices or the gunpowder or whatever is coming out of these great Chinese dynasties of the past,
Mhm.
now being kind of spread around the rest of the world. Everybody kind of wants a piece of China.
Yep. This would be the Qing dynasty at this point. Again,
You're into more of the world
sorry.
history than I am.
This
No,
is the
you.
Qing dynasty. This is the last great
I'm going to
empire.
take
And
your
the
word for it.
reason, and the reason everybody wants in is they've closed themselves off for the second time. China has closed themselves off before, and so to have Hong Kong or Guangzhou or Shanghai, all these different little ports that were left open, is a big deal. And Britain is trying to make up a trade deficit from tea. One of the biggest things they're buying is tea, and this is before they really set up the plantations in India. They need that tea. They need that
Yeah.
tea. It's become a part of their culture, and so they're going to try to find something equally addictive, or more so, to get the Chinese hooked on, so they can actually have this favorable balance of trade. And so the spheres of influence are going to come in. Everyone wants a piece of China, and Britain's going to get a hold of it, and they're going to try to fight back. But unfortunately, China is also having another problem around the same time. The Qing dynasty cannot stop the import of opium after the Second Opium War. Britain now controls Hong Kong, and they take that area and they start breaking up the spheres of influence and bringing it among other European nations. And the Qing dynasty is having a hard time because now they're fighting an internal rebellion. The Taiping Rebellion is going to start after this. It's going to get really nasty. I mean, we're talking like really bad. And when I say really bad, I mean at some point, historians note that the lack of meat and the lack of food leads to human flesh being sold in open markets for about 38 pence per pound. That's not even a joke. In the interior parts, the rural parts of China, and in some of the cities, a lot of the big cities, it's so few people are left who can and will take care of the animals, and there's no importation of food because there's this big civil war and no one's bringing it in. The spheres of influence, human flesh. In some cases, it is seen that human flesh is going for 38 pence a pound.
Wow.
It is terrifying. It is, you don't say it's human flesh,
Well, yeah.
but if it has a tattoo on it, and they call it Steve,
Yeah.
there you go.
Man.
But like it gets really really bad, and so Europe's going to find a headway into here, and Europe's going to have a headway into here since the 1600s and trading and stuff like that. But if you look on the map, Britain's going to take a lot of it's got India, it's got a lot of
It's where the opium and the tea
where the
is.
opium and the tea is. Yeah, they got their drugs,
Yeah.
caffeine and opium, which if you mix together, I've heard good things. Don't do that.
No.
Don't do that. But if you look at the purple, though, France is going to come in because France has got to be there too.
France has to be there. The French. They gotta be involved. They gotta follow the British. France takes Indochina, which is Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and one of the things they're going to get out of there is, yes, they grow opium in French Indochina.
Mm-hmm.
They're also going to push their religion. The French always push Catholicism when they go on these imperialism treks here. Lots of rice coming out of this area
That's
of
the
the world.
champa rice. That's the really good rice.
Yeah, that's the rice we all love and like, right? So they got their little piece, and they're there, but it's the French, right? They're going to do things that you would hope they'd have learned from Africa, but they're going to kind of continue it a little more. They're not going to be as forgiving and as hands offish as the British are going to be. You have this French colonial rule in Indochina
Mm-hmm.
that's still very prevalent with the architecture that you still see there today, right? And with the food, right? That comes into play. Yeah, it's banh mi, right? It's the banh mi sandwiches, right? It's the French crusty French bread and all of the good stuff in the middle. You have that interplay there of the French there, and the French. I'm gonna fast forward just a little bit if I can,
By all means.
because the French are the only ones really to come back after World War II.
Oh yeah.
Everybody else after World War II, or even pre-World War II, is going to start giving up not giving up, sorry, giving independence, right? You're going, okay, you want independence.
Oh, yeah.
You look at some of these dates, it's 46, 47, 48,
It's way
those
faster
types of
than
things.
Africa and India.
Yeah, it's way much faster than that. Way much faster.
Way much faster.
That's great. That's great English on my part, right there.
This is where we're from.
Yeah.
This is public
Right.
education.
But France comes back in the 40s and the 50s and tries to kind of have that dominance. One of my students just said about an hour ago, right, that they're trying because they got humiliated during World War II. Right, this is how they're going to show dominance now. That we're gonna go out and we're gonna dominate a country. And well, I'm sorry, it's France. It's not going to work out the way they had planned. When you build your big fort in a valley and you don't think the enemy is going to take advantage of the high ground and you have your general say so, you're probably going to lose that holding that you had.
Okay, so real quick, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. May I go on a 2-minute rant about the French army?
Go for it.
Okay, so the joke is that the French army surrenders at the drop of a hat. But remember, this is still
5.5 weeks, not a drop of a hat. 5.5
weeks. Granted, it's against the Blitzkrieg, though. So all I'm saying is France at one time, everyone dunks on France, but remember, France at one point took on all of Europe single-handed and was bored and wondered what else it was going to do. The French army, like at one point, was the army. You don't mess with, you don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit in the wind. He sure as heck don't mess with the French army. The French army came to our rescue. And during the American Revolution, the French army was amazing, and then it didn't industrialize fast enough.
No, it did not.
Industrializing separated the Frankish powerhouse of Napoleonic insanity and the people who knew how to use a machine gun. Yeah. So before I get France, but France.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the new player in the story. Let's talk about that country all the way over there on the east, the one in the dark blue, because yes, they are isolationists. Yes, they're following the Monroe Doctrine. Yes, the rest of Europe goes, yes, keep your happy butt over there like you said you were going to do. Don't come bother us on our side of our own world. Asia belongs to us. Yes, that's the European mindset, right? Asia belongs to us. The Americans are like, but free and open trade. We would like to have something in China. That would be awesome. Open door policy is proposed. Right? John Hay. Hey, let's talk about
John
May. Hey, let's talk about free open trade in China. And the Europeans, to their credits, tell the Americans, no, Doy, you have the Monroe Doctrine. This was your idea. Get out. Don't come back. We don't need your help. Until
we put the line down the middle of the apartment, and then we realized they have the refrigerator.
Yeah. Yes.
They have the fridge on their side. Until what?
Until the Boxers.
Oh, the Boxers.
And the Boxer Rebellion.
Let's talk about the Boxer Rebellion first.
Now, how do you describe the Boxers? You call them Chinese nationalists? Because I've seen that described by a lot of people.
First off, and this is not something I'm very proud of, but first off, I mentioned that at one point everyone was kung fu fighting. So, which is not a joke.
And I'm the 70s kid.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not even the joke. Everyone is kung fu fighting. These Boxers are going to walk around the wharfs. It's going to start as a nationalist movement. In my opinion, it is a nationalist movement that starts by using traditional Chinese methods to literally kick the crap out of the foreigners in the districts. It starts out as gangs.
Yeah, and it's straight up intimidation.
It's straight up intimidation. It's like, oh, you Americans have boxing? That's adorable. We have a way of fighting that has been perfected over 2,000 years. By all means, have you met Donnie Yen?
Yeah.
Have you seen it, man? It's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. But what happens is, and that's the problem with it, the fact that it starts out from such disparate groups that are still reeling from the pain of the Taiping Rebellion is going to make sure that these groups are haphazardly equipped. Some are going to have guns. Some are going to have modern uniforms. Some are going to have peasant clothing and are going to be using Guangdong, the spears.
Yes.
They're going to use traditional weapons. If you look at martial arts, traditional weapons are peasant weapons. And so they have been arming themselves the way the Chinese peasants have been arming themselves against warlords for 5,000 years of history. We're going to fight the oppressors like we always have. Yeah, but
Yep.
the oppressors now have machine guns, tanks, and other things. And this is where America is going to get a chance to come in.
Because they kill a few Americans. Right? Thousands of Europeans are being killed, and Europe's trying to put together this coalition army. Maybe it's the first kind of attempt at a League of Nations or United Nations at the time because they want to get the. And the Americans go, oh, no. They took out a couple of our people. We're coming over. And we're not just going to send, a few. We're going to send the Marines. Right? We're going to send, and like Mr. said, we're going to come with machine guns. We got this. We'll take care of it. American perspective point of view, because we got to protect our own.
So at one point, we fought alongside the Russians, the
Yep.
French, the British, the Germans. We were all high-fiving and best friends because we were fighting the Chinese, which the Chinese did the Russian method. We have overwhelming numbers. We're going to try to win the overwhelming numbers, but we've evened the odds with industrial warfare. And so I argue it was a nationalist movement that started too slowly and was not properly equipped because China had not industrialized yet. And because of that, they are beaten.
In this case, firepower wins out.
Firepower wins
Right?
out.
And this opens the door. I see what I did there. This opens the door for the second time.
What kind of policy?
Right? Where the Americans go, hey, since we're here, anybody want to talk about free trade again?
Now that we're in the room,
Yeah,
we can see.
Now that we're here and, we got the Marines with us, anybody want to talk about free and open trade with China? Can we get ourselves either an open door or a sphere of influence? And if the fear, though, and I don't know legit if it is, but the fear from some European countries is, well, if we don't give them one, if we don't agree to this, they're just going to take one.
Yeah, because they're already here.
Yeah, they're here.
And that's the problem. We talk about this, and I know one of the problems that other countries have with American history is that we seem to bluster a lot, but we're not in this case.
Remember, we just beat up Spain.
Yeah, we had just beaten Spain. Of course, we didn't tell them we were at war till we had gotten in position.
Well, see, now, the Spanish have wooden ships, and the Americans have the new steel ships. This wasn't, and my students will recognize this. Spain is a dying world power from the moment it becomes a world power.
Yep.
That they're already declining, and by the time 1898 rolls around, somebody just has to put them out of their misery.
And that would be us.
And that would be the United States. We get the foothold in Hawaii. We get the Philippines. We spend $20 million, but we buy the Philippines, and that becomes a bigger issue for the United States with the Filipino insurrection because the Emilio Aguinaldo,
that was his name.
doesn't mess around. He understands, hey, you're going to give Cuba its independence from Spain. Why not us? Why are we being treated different than the Cubans?
And he makes his case to the American people.
Yep.
That's the trick of it. Emilio Aguinaldo is no fool. He knows you don't stop the American army, you stop the American citizens. So he's going to plead his case to them, and he's going to be successful.
Yeah,
to a point.
To a point. I mean, the Americans do put down the insurrection. William Taft becomes the first military governor of the Philippines, and the U.S. is going to hold the Philippines until 47.
Yep.
Right. Again, fast forward really quick. Right. MacArthur and his.
I will return.
I shall return. Yeah, I was about to say I'll be back. So I shall return.
The MacArthur-nator.
Right. But you get this.
You
get this interplay where the Americans are finally there, and it's a good little kind of watching place for the U.S. as well, because even if this is a World War II map, you can see they're kind of right where they can keep an eye on everybody because there's a new player in this game as well. And that's another, you said China cut itself off for the second time.
Oh, yeah.
Japan's always been cut off.
Japan has always been cut off, even from the ancient times.
Yeah.
So real quick, open door policy because we're there and because we bluster, but American Marines are some of the toughest fighting.
Yeah.
We're one of the best fighting forces on the planet. And so what we've got the open door, the open door policy.
Yeah.
Hey, open door.
Hey.
So then, yeah, because now we've got, as you said, the newest player. A new player has appeared, Smash Brothers style, and it's Japan. Because Japan, I love the imperialist story of Japan. I know a lot of other people, many other people would disagree with me, but I think it's a fascinating story because Japan turns the tables. Japan is savvy. Japan says, wow. When we come in, Commodore Perry comes in real quick with these big old ships.
It's the 1850s Young America movement for our U.S. historians.
Yeah. He's coming in and he says, hi, we're America. We'd like you to open up your country. And if you don't like that, have you met our giant ships?
Yeah.
And the shogun, who could not stop them, is destabilized enough to the point that the emperor can be restored by a group of people in there that wanted to restore the emperor to traditional power. And the Emperor Meiji has a situation here. He's got an opportunity, and this is an 18-year-old kid. And you and I are around 18-year-old kids all day, and I have not much hope for 18-year-old kids until Emperor Meiji. And he goes, okay, I've got my power back. I've got these merchants who help me get my power back. I'm going to need to bust some heads. So what I need to do is I need to flatter. My goodness, America, you sure are tough. How does your infrastructure work? My goodness, Germany, you have an amazing law system. Could you help us with that? Oh, France. And this is maybe, France, your army is pretty dang good. Could you teach us how to be like you? Germany, could you teach us how to use those awesome new guns? America, how do I make those ships? And America's like, oh, well, we'll show you. And we do. And then Japan says, we want to be just like you, ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
And they
your savviness, though, when they leave Japan and go about, turns into savageness. Going after Manchuria, going after the Korean Peninsula, working its way down the Chinese coast. What they do in Vietnam when they get to Vietnam, what they do in
to be fair,
New Guinea. And,
oh no, I get you. To be fair, though, this is stuff that's been going on.
Oh yes, I mean that savviness turns into the savages because it's what they're learning from their history. This is what they've seen. Yes,
Europe says go for it because we want to fight you too. But Japan's like, hey everybody, remember us?
Yes.
Remember the samurai? Now they got guns.
Yes. Right, but just make sure we understand that they're doing it the way the Europeans are doing it. It's the Americans when they look at it and go, well, as long as we stay out of it, we don't have to worry about it.
And that's why we don't have a sphere of influence.
Yeah.
We don't want to deal with that mess because
we just want to keep an eye on it. Philippines are great. Sorry, we're going to,
Take a look at that map, though. Japan extends itself greatly.
Yep.
And somehow, very quickly, but very, very savagely and savagely, is going to create themselves as a massive Pacific power.
That's easy. It's the power packs from the 1920s. The 4 power, the 5 power, the 9 power naval agreements, where they get the naval numbers in the Pacific because they only have to worry about one ocean.
Yep.
And they're going to be able to grow their numbers because the Americans and the Europeans, and particularly the British, right, are hem themselves in on a two ocean navy instead of what we now have in the U.S. is two separate ocean navies. We got a Pacific Fleet and Atlantic Fleet. We only got one. Yeah, we had one, and Japan's able to take advantage. Again, part of that
well, it's opportunism stuff. Plus, it's also very, very, very quick. Japan knows where to stop. That's the one thing. The Japanese are an extraordinarily adaptable people. I always use the story of the 2 guns from Portugal. In 1600, Tokugawa Ieyasu is going to borrow, or the Tokugawa clan is going to buy 2 rifles from Portugal. That's it. They offer them thousands, but they're like, no, we'll just take 2. One to break apart and one to practice with. And they will have perfected and improved the design within a year. And then, of course, they melt all the stuff because they don't want peasants having guns.
Yeah.
Because they're not stupid. But the thing is, Japan realizes its advantage. It realizes the European powers are pulling back from Asia first. Even in the early, while imperialism is going on, except for France, they're going to start pulling back from Asia because it's too much money.
It is. It's too much for most of those European countries. They're exactly right. They can't afford it outside of the British.
Well, yeah,
and the British have enough and a lot, and the French who sometimes they're just stubborn and just hang on. And
the French have to have. It's more of a power play. It's more of a we can hang with you. We can hang with you. So Japan comes in. Japan's set up. Japan takes Manchuria. Look, man, I know it's iron and coal, but there must be like root beer and Skittles in Manchuria. Everybody wants Manchuria. Manchuria is like the thing.
Iron and coal, steam, area of steam. Got to make the ships. You got to make it go, baby. I mean, we got to feed the machines, right? I'm gonna fast forward. I'm gonna skip over a war, and I'm gonna go to World War II. Japan is working its way down the coast of China to get to Indochina because it has rice.
Mm-hmm.
We got to feed our people. We got to feed our troops. We're going to go to the Dutch East Indies, although this says Netherlands East Indies,
which is the Dutch,
which is
the Netherlands,
the Dutch East Indies, which has oil.
That's what they're aiming for.
Because they can't get it from the United States anymore. They can't get it from Western Europe, right?
And that's when the Australians are going to take notice.
Yeah.
What's going on here, mate? Nothing. Nothing.
Right. But they're kind of working their way down. And again, then to finish the kind of the Japanese imperialism stuff, the attack on Pearl Harbor, but most people don't realize that same day they also attacked the Philippines. Right? It's the exact same time period, the exact same time frame. They're attacking Pearl Harbor, but they're also attacking the Philippines, and they're going to have the Philippines under their control within a few months.
Which is something I think we never look at enough in American history or world history. Never look at the Philippines part of World War II, the Bataan Death March, the massive use of it, because the Philippines are a very strategic location.
Yes.
They are,
and that's why the Americans are going to buy them from Spain. Mm-hmm. Thanks for letting us beat you up. Here's $20 million for your troubles. Oh, and for the Philippines, thank you very much.
Yeah.
But it gives that we get to see everything, because you can't get in and out of the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean now without going past that, unless you go all the way around Australia.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah. So it gives you that beautiful vantage point.
Yeah.
It's the same reason the British want Gibraltar and Egypt and South Africa. Yep. You can't get in and out of the Med. You can't go around the Horn of Africa and the Cape of Africa without the British knowing about it. Same reason the Americans and the Japanese want the Philippines.
To be fair, they learned that from the Portuguese, though. Yeah, set up your buckies along the way.
Yeah.
So, imperialism in Asia is going to be it looks way different. It's this patchwork of basically trying to play, not necessarily Connect Four like you have in Africa, but it's more like strategically placing certain outposts. They're not going to take over all of China. They're not going to take over all of China. It's too big and it's too rural.
Yeah, and you don't need you don't need the mountains region of Western China.
You definitely don't need the Tian Shan Mountains. You don't need the Himalayas.
You don't need Mongolian and the Gobi Desert.
I think, honestly, deep in my heart, I think they're still scared of Mongolia.
Well, they do get left alone a lot.
The Mongolia gets left alone because everyone's like, oh, it's too dry up there. No, man. When the zombie apocalypse happens, which I am 100% behind.
It's something about the throat singing, I bet.
Oh, it's something about that. It's scary. Also, they're the ones who are going to be riding around going, oh, man, this is so much more fun. Yeah. This is great. This is like my ancestors. Right. The Mongolians are not messed with. There's not a lot of resources up there outside of, the herding and the grazing and a few mineral rights. But yeah, they're not holding. It's not like Africa. It's not completely holding and changing the culture.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not at all. The only culture that's trying to be put on other things is the Japanese way. But the thing is, the weird thing about that is China influenced Japan so much, and now Japan is trying to influence China, and it's this weird kind of back and forth movement. And Korea is just stuck in the middle of going.
Korea and Indochina, Vietnam in particular, right? The dislike, the distrust, the disdain, right? Because it is kind of that yes, there's an influence between the Japanese and the Chinese, but let's face it, they're in Vietnam for a particular reason. And it's our rice now. You're going to grow it. We're going to get it from you. But it belongs to us. You don't get it. Those types of things. Yeah. Korea sometimes maybe because they need more land. Right, yeah. And there's some decent resources in Korea. Kind of the same thing coming off of Manchuria.
Korea's got a lot of mineral resources and stuff like that.
But
so here's the deal, though. When they start pulling out, they'll pull out quicker in Asia, 47, 46, stuff like that. Except, as we've talked about, Indochina.
Yep.
France is going to hold tight, and it's going to take a rebellion. In 1954,
Ho Chi Minh declares Vietnam independent in 47, right? It's a Declaration of Independence, right? Because everybody's gone. The Americans who removed the Japanese, they're both gone. Yep. The Japanese got removed. The Americans removed them. The Americans left, and it left that little vacuum. And then when Ho Chi Minh writes a Declaration of Independence and is shopping it around, anybody please recognize this. Let's go. Comes the United States first, because why not? They're the big power coming out of the war. And here comes containment policy. And we get caught up in our own political policy of containment. And President Truman says, no, we're not recognizing you.
So real quick, tell them why no. What is Ho Chi Minh's idea?
Ho Chi Minh is a communist. He calls himself a
He's a
communist.
communist, but it's not the
It's
same.
not the same type of communism. It's one thing we mess up in the U.S. is we look at communism and we put it under the exact same. It's all the same.
Communism is
What
communism.
they practice in the Soviet Union is communism in China, communism in Indochina, communism in North Korea, and historically the Russians and the Chinese do not get along with each other. And when they're communists, they're actually practicing two different forms, styles, whatever you want to say, of communism. Right? Ho Chi Minh's got a different one in mind too. Right here, he's just using that term. Now he is a member of the founding member of the French Communist Party, founding member of the French Indochina Communist Party. But it's also, if you look at it, right, the Nazi Party is a democratic socialist party,
Yep.
right? It's those types of things. So it may be a little semantics with words. There might be some interplay with it, right? But he also maybe understands that the government's going to have a lot of control, and that's what a communist government says. So
It actually seems, from looking at it, it strikes a balance between the Chinese collectivism and the Stalinist control. It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
yeah,
He wants to do this experiment, but once again, we see the C word and we lose our minds.
Yeah, we get too caught up with that. That allows the French to come back in and try to regain their colony of Indochina, and it goes very, very badly for the French. The Americans refuse the French uh, request for help, but then the Americans get right back into it, right?
Yep.
They support No Dinh Diem's government in '56. They don't allow the unification election to happen
Mhm.
because they know Ho Chi Minh's going to win. By the end of the '50s, we're sending military advisors to Vietnam, like 250 under President Eisenhower, and then it starts to escalate under Kennedy and then really escalates under Johnson to creating the Vietnam War. That's a fallout from European imperialism and the Americans now becoming interventionist instead of
As
being
opposed
isolationist, right?
So that's the thing. So in Asia, it was real quick grab bag of everybody getting a little bit of something, spheres of influence, conflict, conflict, conflict. When everybody backs off, the only thing that are really still there are British influence and the holding of Hong Kong. So at the time that we're fighting for Vietnam, the only other real portion held in any true way is going to be Hong Kong until 1999.
Yeah, because the Korean War ends in a stalemate.
Yep.
Right, ends in a ceasefire. Excuse me. It technically hasn't ended yet. With the ceasefire, they just kind of go back to where they were. So containment worked in that end. So I mean,
Yeah.
no new gain lost.
Yeah,
Right.
It's in net zero.
Containment works, rollback doesn't. Right. So Eisenhower's out the window with the rollback idea. We didn't take back a communist country, so it's there still. There today, there's like 10,000 American troops stationed in South Korea
Yep.
to this day.
But
So-
South Korea is an independent nation.
Yeah, South Korea becomes an independent nation, whereas when the Americans pull out of Vietnam in the mid 1970s, the communists easily take over the rest of Vietnam,
Like
Uh,
walls, right?
and then control the country, and then that sets off a whole little domino, if you will, of other countries falling to communism in Indochina
See,
because Laos falls and Cambodia falls.
That feels just more like a theory, like a domino theory.
But it played out. It
It
played out
did.
in Indochina. It didn't go to Thailand and it didn't go to
Well, Thailand
Burma
actually-
/ Myanmar, whatever we're calling it nowadays, because that was the next fear though. Because if
Burma
it
and
kept
Myanmar, yeah.
moving, right, Thailand might fall, Burma might fall, and then India might fall in the communism. We've already had those issues and problems anyways. So that's
I never
so that's
thought-
where the domino theory kind of keeps extending. It does work in Indochina. It does play out in Indochina because you have those communists taking over in Laos, the communists taking over in Cambodia. Good, better. And Vietnam and Laos are still communist today.
Yes.
They're still communist countries today, right? And both agricultural-based economies where I would argue that communism tends to work a lot better in.
Oh yeah,
With agriculture-based
communism is
economies.
way better in pre.
So you kind of have
pre-industrial companies.
that play out.
we talk about that. That's a whole other podcast. Communism, like hunter gatherers were communists, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
So here's real quick though. My question, and here's the last thing we can end on. Do you think domino theory would have happened had we not intervened in the Vietnam War? Do you think we made domino theory a self-fulfilling prophecy?
I'm going to caveat it with this.
Okay.
Under Ho Chi Minh, no. But when does domino theory take place? After Ho dies in 68, 69,
I
somewhere
want to
around
say
there.
about 60, 60.
When Ho Chi Minh dies and there's a new leader in charge, that's when, all right, let's take over the South. When we get the South, let's go to Laos. When we get Laos. So
But is that a reaction?
Ho Chi Minh wouldn't.
Is that new leader coming in reacting to the realities of the war as it was?
Or is he reacting to the political states that are now
so what do
revolving
you
around?
think?
Where are they getting the supplies from? Are they getting it from China or are they getting it from Russia? Because Ho Chi Minh's getting supplies from Russia.
And the new
Remember, the
guy's
Chinese come in and help put an end to the Vietnam conflict, the Vietnam War, excuse me. Right? They worked the back door. So is it that a push from the Chinese then? See, that's the part we don't know. I think it's the part we don't know. How much maybe is that push to spread communism to
it's a different kind of communism, though.
It is,
But it's not Russian communism.
It's not Russian communism, and China's always trying to do this crazy thing where they're trying to combine a little bit of communism with a little bit of capitalism. Because when Mao Zedong dies and Zhou Enlai becomes in charge, Zhou Enlai, he's the one that really is opening up China with the United States, pushing for the recognition of China by President Carter, right?
Zhou Enlai does that, but I would argue that Deng Xiaoping actually succeeds in the whole creating a business system. Because, I mean, if we look at China now, they're doing pretty good economically.
Yeah, so that's it.
But their policies are causing them to have
we're trying to be politically communist,
okay,
and economically new socialist. Let's not use capitalist.
Let's not even use the C word. Let's new socialist.
The new form of socialism. Can we do that? Because your policies are still very old school communist sometimes, but you want to do this kind of new economic socialism thing. Can you make it work?
I would argue you cannot. Capitalism, in my understanding, and you can call me naive, but capitalism becomes a major factor of the political system. You cannot have a capitalist economy and a socialist government because it seems weird. But yeah, I think we'll end on that.
Yeah,
sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Hopefully that made sense at some point. You just got fun
somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle, people are like, I don't know what's going on anymore. And the answer is, yeah.
So that's what happens when you just let us free flow.
Neither does Europe. Neither does Europe.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And sometimes the United States has no clue what's going on either.
But the great thing about being
the reason everybody gets involved in Indochina, and
we don't know what's going on, and we're worried because we don't understand the difference.
No, we don't, and that's a podcast for another day.
That is. Thank you for listening. Take some Advil; it'll help.
Yes.